Hey everyone, this is Kit Cabell with Hardlens Media, and this is Perspectives. So, Joe Biden's a nominee, and the establishment is doing whatever they can to basically rally everyone around Joe Biden and his campaign. Corporate media is helping out as well because, hey, vote blue no matter who. But, it's going to be really difficult to really make that message, hit home for a lot of voters because it's just not going to work. And so recently, Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez was on The View. And they were asking her if she's had a conversation with Joe Biden. I don't know if anyone's been paying attention, but if you check out some of the recent interviews that Joe Biden has had on CNN, on MSNBC, and it's quite clear that Joe Biden's not all there. And even when he got that endorsement from Senator Bernie Sanders, Joe Biden was struggling to respond. But hey, again, perhaps no one's paying attention, or perhaps they have the blinders on, who knows, but that's corporate media. But here's AOC's response to The View. Check it out.
Last week, Bernie, suspended his campaign and endorsed Joe Biden. And now, are you going to be able to do the same thing given the fact that everyone's initial thought is to get who out of the White House and get some semblance of, intelligence back in? Do you think it's time to have a conversation with Joe?
Yeah, absolutely. I think, I think right now, just the stakes are too high when it comes to another 4 years of Trump. My community especially has been so impacted, and it's, for a lot of communities, this is an issue of life and death. We've had kids in cages. We've had a pandemic response that happened way too late that has cost us lives. We have people that don't have access to critical care that they need. I think it's really important that we rally behind our Democratic nominee in November.
So, Congresswoman, some progressives are suggesting that with Bernie out of the race, they'll vote third party. That would be a catastrophe, in my opinion. What do you say to those people? And also, part two, Biden has made some efforts to appeal to progressives, like lowering the eligibility age for Medicare to 60 and expanding student debt forgiveness. Is that enough?
So I think. Thank you. Yes, I think, and I think that they're connected questions. As I think what's really important is that we do realize that at the end of the day, one of these two candidates are going to be elected president of the United States. It's either going to be Joe Biden or it's going to be Donald Trump. And I think it's important to, communicate some empathy. I know for a lot of people, this was not the outcome that they may have wanted, and this was not the choice that they wanted to make. But ultimately, when it comes to those two, I don't think it's particularly close in terms of what communities will be made more vulnerable. And I think but what I also think is really important is that the way to I think move in a unifying direction, as I said before, is that unity isn't a feeling, it's a process. And I think that that Biden can go further. I think that it's not necessarily enough. Lowering Medicare to 60 by 5 years is still more conservative than what Hillary Clinton proposed in 2016. Hillary was talking about lowering it to 50 4 years ago. And so I think that there's certainly room. I think that there's going to be room on issues like immigration, Puerto Rico, healthcare, climate change, and I think that it's healthy to do that. And I think it's what we shouldn't do is recreate this dynamic where we are kind of finger wagging and nagging people into voting because it's not a way of generating enthusiasm. I think one thing that we can do is improve the policies that we have as a party to tell young people, to tell all sorts of people, we see you and we have a plan for you, and we're going to create hope for all sorts of communities in the United States.
So that was AOC's answer. Long-winded, and there's a couple things I'd like to respond to it. So first, number one, she hasn't had a conversation with Joe Biden and his campaign, but if it's not this week, but then perhaps maybe next week, she probably will. But, there's one thing that's really standing out to me, and that is when they ask her about third parties and how people might not want to vote and what does Joe Biden and his campaign have to do to basically get their support. Well, first, there's a growing movement of independence in this country right now because people can't relate to the DNC or RNC. And plus, let's look at the two choices: former Vice President Joe Biden and President Donald Trump. Both these individuals have been on the wrong side of history. Both these individuals have abused their power. Both these individuals have serious accusations of sexual assault, sexual harassment, sexual abuse. So yeah, when voters look at these two choices, they're going to get sick to their stomach, which is why more and more people are identifying themselves as independents and probably vote third party. And there's also another thing too. Perhaps there's going to be a growing portion of this population right now that will not vote during this election cycle. And it's a very serious issue. And that's a problem for Joe Biden's campaign because, again, it's hard to relate to his campaign. Remember, during the early part of this primary, Joe Biden's campaign were talking down to Bernie Sanders supporters and progressives and independents. They were saying that Medicare for all is a pipe dream and that student debt forgiveness will never happen. Well, with the current crisis that we are in, people are really open to the idea of Medicare for all and debt forgiveness, medical debt forgiveness, student debt forgiveness. Because right now, 22 million Americans have just filed for unemployment. So, yeah, they lost their health insurance. It's a messed up economy that we are in, and we got to do something to fix it. But Joe Biden, with his campaign and how he's talked to voters, especially Bernie Sanders supporters, good luck. And AOC can be there as well to cheerlead people to vote blue no matter who, but it's not going to work. So it was a long-winded answer on AOC's part, but at the end of the day, Joe Biden is going to need more than AOC or Bernie Sanders to rally progressives and independents. Because seeing how this election cycle worked out, seeing how there was election fraud, and how people were unable to vote, good luck, really. But then there's a second video clip that I want to point out, and that is when they ask AOC about Biden and him having a woman vice president.
Now, Vice President Biden's been very clear that he plans to pick a female vice president. You're not old enough to be eligible to run with him, but do you have any suggestions for a female vice president, someone that you'd like to see on your party's ticket?
I think what's incredible is that we have a lot of talented women of color who are leaders in this country, whether they're in Congress or whether they're in the Senate, whether they're governors of states or whether they don't even hold elected positions at all, but had held elected positions. I think what's really important is that it's a combination of two things. One, of course, to have our first female vice president and to have that be a woman of color is a significant milestone. But the other thing that I think is important is, what does this woman value? What policies does she champion? And that brings it more, that's the difference between us just talking about a token and us talking about substantive, incredible leadership. And so in terms of who that is, it's really hard to kind of to point some out because there are leaders out there. But, I don't think we have a shortage of them, that's for sure. I would love that woman to be progressive as a kind of a counterbalance politically.
Obviously, there's a lot of hype around who Joe Biden will pick as his vice president. He said it numerous times that he's going to pick a woman as his VP, so that's great. But you know what? I don't care. Again, he could pick anyone, be it Senator Elizabeth Warren, Senator Kamala Harris. It doesn't matter. It really doesn't. And you want to know why it doesn't matter? Because, again, at the end of the day, what are you going to do for the American people? It doesn't matter who you pick. It matters what policies you're going to fight for. What are the issues you're going to fight for? Are you going to fight for Medicare for all? Are you going to fight for student debt forgiveness? And knowing Joe Biden and his record for those two issues, probably not. And I don't know who his VP is going to be, but that's not going to solve the issue too. Joe Biden has a serious image problem. He said before he doesn't have any empathy for millennials. He said it in 2 interviews that he would veto Medicare for all. And his VP can say whatever she wants. It's not going to change the fact that Joe Biden has really did a terrible job in trying to convince Bernie Sanders supporters, progressives, independents, non-voters that he actually cares about them. And then as a final note, Joe Biden has 8 women who basically have said that he has sexually harassed them, sexually abused them, sexually assaulted them. And that's concerning. And I don't think we should turn a blind eye to that. And whoever his vice president choice will be, she's going to have to acknowledge those women. She's going to have to acknowledge the fact that Joe Biden has a very shady history. You know, and again, just for the record, he was against desegregation. He was against busing. He voted with the credit card corporations in 2005. He voted for the war in Iraq. He's been on the wrong side of a lot of issues. So he could pick whoever he wants, but it's not going to solve the problem. So good luck, DNC. You can have AOC and Senator Bernie Sanders and the rest of the squad and other pundits rally around Joe Biden because everyone has Trump derangement syndrome. But there's a reason why we got Trump in the first place. Because in 2016, the DNC decided to run a corporatist against a reality TV show host. And it didn't work. And there's a very good chance that it might not work again. We're right now in precarious times, and it's going to be a very, very, very important conversation amongst progressives, independents, and third-party voters about how we fix this system, because we're not going to get it fixed in the establishment. And so, at the end of the day, good luck corporate media, good luck establishment, because Joe Biden has a long way to go to really convince progressives and independents that he's actually going to care for them. And good luck to his vice president choice, because she is also going to have to acknowledge his history, his faults, and his campaign's major mistakes, especially in the early part of this election cycle. This is Kit Cabello with Hard Lens Media, and this is Perspectives. Peace, guys.